Oh, hello. So I am here to explain to you some potential next steps that you could do if you are finished typing up your paragraph. Let's first, though, go over a couple of things that you should have already done, right? So if you started today typing up all of your sentences on the outline, you would have ended up with something like this, right? Where you have all of your sentences in their place. You hopefully already have started deleting these headings, right? So like get rid of where it says BK, and then deleting the extra space between the sentences, right? So we should have all the headings gone, and we want to make sure, the other thing that's really important we make sure we do is that we don't just delete to that point, but we delete to make sure that every sentence follows the sentence right after it. Remember, we're only writing one paragraph, so it's indented at the start, and everything else just flows right after it, right? So when you're all said and done, you should have a paragraph that looks a little something like this, right? So it has all of your sentences that flow together, and it has an indent at the start of it, right? So if you have a paragraph like this, you're looking good, and you want to make sure you've gone through the checklist, right? So part of that checklist, make sure that you've double spaced your paragraph. So that means we're highlighting, we're double spacing, so on and so forth, right? Again, hopefully you've done all of those things. You've put a heading up in the top corner, so on and so forth. So make sure you've done those things, and then here's some different revision techniques that you can use. So, for example, one thing that you could do is add some detail to your main points. The other thing I'll tell you too is all these slides are available on my learning page. If you click on today's date on the learning page, you should be able to find access to all these slides so you can look at all the different examples. So we can add some detail to our main points. If our main points look like this, to begin, Paris is self-centered, then we can, throw in some different vocabulary words like vain Paris is self-centered, or he's an intensely self-centered character. Or we could hint at a little bit of what we're going to be talking about. Being confronted by his brother brings out Paris's self-centered side. Or to begin, Paris is self-centered when he demonstrates how his thoughts are on himself instead of war. So we want to make sure our main points have detail. That's one thing you could check, is that all three of your yellows have something like that. You can add some detail to your evidence and your evidence transitions. So we learned about evidence transitions like this one, the text states. Well, you could replace those with a little bit of context, right? This will help Grandma make sure that she can follow what's going on in the story if she hasn't read the Iliad, right? So you can say, well, as the competition continued, McCarty writes that, and then put your quote in there. Or after running a race against two overconfident princes, it states that. So we can do some interesting things with our transitions and enhance them in some way. We can always, throw in some inserts, right? Like these examples here. I'll let you, if you want to pause, you can look at those examples. You can add some inserts and lead into your quotes. Again, pause and look at the examples if you want. Or you can add inserts in all sorts of different places, right? So like the same thing we were doing with our stories, answering how, answering what else, answering what other description, and answering where or when, is stuff that we can add to a paragraph as well. Just is maybe a little trickier, and you have to get intentional with where you put the inserts. Here's some examples, right? So typically what I tell students when they're adding inserts to paragraphs is to usually add them after your transition, right? Even though it's still the beginning of the sentence, that transition is important. We want that first and foremost. So instead of furthermore, the weak Paris realizes he has no choice but to face Menelaus, we can throw in a where or when insert after his confrontation with Hector, right? Or in some cases, that insert can kind of take the place of our transition, right? Feeling ashamed that being called out for that weakness, the text states that, and then we lead into our quote that way, right? Or dejected and defeated, this shows that Paris is weak because, right? So in some cases, we have to leave our transition at the beginning. In some cases, we might be able to throw an insert before the transition. Just kind of, you got to play with your sentences and make sure that they make sense. So I would recommend, if you're on this step and you're at this point, try and throw a couple of inserts in there. Try and do some of these tricks with, leading into your quotes. Try and do some things to add detail to your main points. Anything that you can add at this point. is just gravy, and it's good practice for the next paragraph we write, which is gonna count, right? This one's sort of our basic first steps. The next one, we're putting it all together and trying to do it all at once. So the more practice we get with this kind of stuff, the better. Okay? Do your best.